So the other day, I had a really interesting first time experience with psilocybin mushrooms. And the reason I decided to try them in the first place was because I've had a lot of friends who have said it's increased their creativity, opened them up to new ways of thinking, and even improved their intelligence. Some friends, after taking mushrooms, they're better readers, they've improved their comprehension skills. So that's the main reason I decided to try and take them. Going into it, I expected, I think it was more from like media, television, and maybe some bullshit I've heard in school with, trying to scare you about drugs. I thought I'd just go into this whole nother fucking world where, okay, I'm gonna see like pink elephants go by. I'm gonna throw off all my clothes. I'm not gonna know what's what. But that was not the experience at all. And I guess I'll take you from the beginning of the high to the very end. When I first took them, you don't feel anything. It takes a while for it to get into your system. And the friend of mine who gave me the mushrooms, he said, okay, it'll take about half an hour, 45 minutes for you to really feel anything. And I was like, okay, so 45 minutes in, I didn't really feel anything. I felt like maybe a really, really slight buzz. It was very similar to taking just a tiny, tiny bit of weed. And I was like, okay, well, you know what? I took about as much as he did, and I'm a much bigger guy, so I took a little bit more of the mushrooms, only like another gram and a half, maybe. I think in total I took maybe 5 grams that day, around there, maybe a bit less. And then about an hour later, I started to feel it a lot more. It was like a very good, moderate high. I wasn't debilitated in any way, but I got this nice uplifting feeling where I just had stress and anger and anxiety go away. And I was in a public place. I was at the Guelph Veg Festival, and talking to people does make me nervous, and I get anxiety around people because I do actually think everyone's trying to kill me. But that all went away, and it was great. I was talking to lots of people, I wasn't nervous, and everything was going well. Then, about an hour after that, it really started kicking in, and I just got this amazing, warm, hugging feeling all over my body, and just any stress and anxiety that I had just totally went away, and I was just in the state of absolute bliss. But it wasn't debilitating. I could still think perfectly clearly, and I think because all of my stress and anxiety went away, I was actually much more articulate than usual. I think the social stress that I usually have kind of blocks me from being as articulate and expressing myself in the way I want to. So I was having some really good, deep discussions with people about nutrition, philosophy, and it was going really well. It's not like marijuana where it does debilitate you in that way. Usually when I smoke weed, I do have a loss for words, and I have trouble thinking quickly, and I'm just overall slower. But with this, uh, I felt smarter, really. I could just articulate myself so much better, more clearly, and I was making connections with things so much easier, and I was much more expressive. So, yeah, don't I like, at least in my own experience, I know everyone else's experience is going to be different, but it didn't feel debilitating to me. And that's one of the reasons why I don't smoke weed very often, like maybe once every 2 or 3 months. It does feel somewhat debilitating, even though it takes away stress. This mushroom high was much more pleasant, not just because it has a much stronger impact on taking away your anxiety, but it also doesn't feel debilitating. And talking about debilitation, it does make you like lose balance. Your coordination does go off. But as far as mental clarity, at least in my own experience, your mileage might vary depending on the strain of mushrooms, your own genetics, how you react to it, and how much you take. But this was great. It felt like I took the absolute perfect amount, and I was just having an amazing time. I can't even explain to you just how freaking amazing I felt. I was just in this state of absolute bliss, and I swear somebody could have just gone up to me, shot me in the stomach right then and there, and I probably would have been on the laugh, giggling like a little girl. I just couldn't stop laughing. I was just having the time of my life, like literally the best experience I've ever had. And at the peak of my high, I did get a little bit of hallucinations. The world was getting a tad wavy. I was seeing like the world distort just a little tiny bit, but I wasn't having like these massive hallucinations like some people claim, like meeting aliens, seeing pink elephants fly by, going off into space. I was still very grounded in reality, just some very minor distortions. But the craziest experience wasn't really a hallucination. It was more of like an emotional thing, and I had this really super hyper awareness of myself, and it started in my hands, and I had this really good, warm, loving sensation in my hands. It worked its way up through my arms into my chest, and I just felt my heart, and it was just so good, like a big warm hug. And I really wish my girlfriend was there, because I just wanted to touch and hold and hug someone so badly. But I did find a big fluffy dog, and he was very nice, and that helped, but it would have been nicer if my girlfriend was there. But then that nice warm feeling in my chest moved down into my penis, and I was like, whoa! And then, yeah, I really wanted my girlfriend there. And during this time, the high comes in like these waves. You just get this super ultra sense of euphoria, then you come back down just slightly, and you're a little bit more normal. And during that time when you're more normal, you're like, oh, okay, it's wearing off. But then after a few minutes, it just goes back up to that real high again, and you're like, oh, whoa, it keeps going, and it keeps doing that. And hours and hours and hours passed, and you're like, what the fuck, this just isn't ending. It's a really, really long, sustained high. And the interesting thing is, with a marijuana, you can kind of knock yourself out of the high if you really try and focus and concentrate, get your adrenaline going, move around a bit. But with mushrooms, it's the exact opposite. If you lay down, rest, don't talk to anyone, don't do anything, it does wear off, and those low points last a lot longer, and it feels like it's really starting to wear off. But when you go up and do stuff and interact with people and talk, that's when the high just keeps going and it gets stronger. And that's kind of a good thing, especially for me, because I have a lot of social anxiety issues, and the mushrooms really did get me to start talking to people, and it's really cool. I think that still carried over. I went to the gym, and I met someone there who recognized me from my YouTube channel, and usually, like, I'm a bit nervous and guarded when I meet people like that, but even when the high was totally worn off the next day, that anxiety wasn't there, so that was probably the best thing that I got out of it. It really helped with my social anxiety. And the funniest thing in that whole time, I was just in such a state of bliss that I was like, oh fuck, after this, my life is ruined. I'm never going to feel this happy again. I'm gonna be fucking addicted to this thing. I'm just gonna need it like crack cocaine. But that wasn't it at all. The next day, there's like this afterglow. I get the same kind of thing with weed. When I smoke weed, there's this afterglow that lasts for like a few weeks where that anxiety that it takes away stays away for quite some time, and it's a similar type of thing. But I don't crave mushrooms. Like, I don't just absolutely need them. I am planning on getting them another time, but I'm definitely not addicted, and I know psilocybin mushrooms aren't physiologically addictive either, so there's no worries there. And as far as physical impairment afterwards, I don't have a hangover. In fact, I have the opposite of a hangover. I just felt so physically great, and the next day, I had one of the best workouts ever. I pushed past a few PRs, and I was just smashing weights like fucking crazy, had tons of energy. So yeah, I've had no negative effects from taking mushrooms at all, both mentally and physically, and it's benefited me, in fact. So that's my whole experience, first time using psilocybin mushrooms. It was fantastic for me. I can't speak for everyone else. I know everyone's experience and mileage will vary. But for me, it really did help. I did get past some social anxiety issues that I've had. It definitely helped with that. It relieved a lot of stress, and physically speaking, I feel like really well rested, and I have more energy to just get up and do shit. So I have to say it's a really good experience for me, and I would recommend psilocybin mushrooms to anyone really, especially if you have some sort of social anxiety issues, because I do feel it opens you up to talking to people more. And if anyone has an issue with me taking drugs, quote unquote, and think I'm a bad person for doing it, well, fuck you. I'm an adult and I can do whatever the fuck I want to do. There are much more horrible, bad things you can do than take psilocybin mushrooms, like kill and eat animals. So keep that in mind if you have any judgment against me. But what I do know, most of you well, I guess most of you won't agree with this because the majority of you watching are probably meat eaters, but I will still recommend psilocybin mushrooms, and I recommend for you to make some vegan fucking gains.
Beef. What a relief. When will this poisonous product cease? This is another public service announcement. You can believe it or you can doubt it. Let us begin now with the cow. The way it gets to your plate and how.